The grand Ashford Hotel lobby glittered like something out of a fairy tale on this Christmas Eve evening. All crystal chandeliers and a towering 30-foot tree draped in gold and silver ornaments that probably cost more than my monthly rent. And the irony of that comparison was not lost on me, as I stood behind the concierge desk, trying to keep my exhausted body upright, after covering 3 double shifts this week because half our staff had called in sick with the flu. The scent of fresh pine from the massive tree mixed with expensive perfumes worn by guests in evening wear who glided across the marble floors like they owned the place, which in a sense they did, their money keeping establishments like the Ashford running, while people like me scrambled to make ends meet on wages that barely covered childcare and rent in this city that seemed designed to crush anyone without a trust fund or family money to fall back on. Jazz versions of Christmas carols drifted through the lobby from hidden speakers. All I Want for Christmas, played by a saxophone that made the familiar tune sound sultry and sophisticated, and I found myself humming along, despite my exhaustion, as I confirmed a dinner reservation for a guest whose diamond bracelet probably cost more than my car. My feet ached in the required heels. My navy uniform felt too tight after stress eating vending machine snacks on my breaks. And I kept glancing toward the back office, where my 5-year-old daughter, Lily, was coloring quietly, her daycare having closed for the holiday and leaving me with no options except to bring her to work and pray my manager Gerald did not notice, or at least chose to look the other way for one night. She had been so good all day, my sweet girl, sitting in that cramped office with her coloring books and her stuffed reindeer Mr. Buttons, occasionally peeking out to wave at me when I passed by, her dark curls bouncing and her smile making every sacrifice worthwhile, because that smile was the reason I got up every morning and pushed through the exhaustion and humiliation of serving people who looked through me like I was invisible. The lobby was packed tonight with guests checking in for Christmas stays, wealthy families laughing and embracing, couples in love stealing kisses under the mistletoe. Someone had hung near the elevators, and the contrast between their joy and my barely contained panic about how I was going to afford the presents I had on layaway at Target made my chest tight, with an anxiety I could not afford to show on my face, because Gerald was always watching, always looking for reasons to criticize, to belittle, to remind us all that we were replaceable and should be grateful for the opportunity to serve. I had just finished helping an elderly couple find their room when I heard the commotion near the elevators, a sharp voice cutting through the gentle jazz and polite conversation like a knife, and my stomach dropped because I recognized that particular tone of entitled displeasure that meant someone was about to make my night much worse. Mrs. Victoria Blackwell stood near the elevator bank, in a fur coat that probably required the deaths of a dozen animals and cost more than I made in a year. Her perfectly painted red lips twisted in displeasure as she spoke loudly enough for everyone in the lobby to hear about how her suite was absolutely unacceptable, and she demanded to speak to a manager immediately because this was not the level of service she expected from a 5-star establishment. I moved toward her automatically, my customer service smile fixed on my face even as my heart sank, because I knew Gerald would blame me somehow, even though I had nothing to do with room assignments and had been stuck at the concierge desk all evening. But in his world, everything was always someone else's fault, and that someone was usually whoever was most convenient to throw under the bus. Gerald appeared from his office like a shark scenting blood in the water, his thin frame wrapped in a suit that was slightly too expensive for his position, his receding hairline swept back with too much gel, his smile obsequious as he approached Mrs. Blackwell with the kind of deference he reserved for people with money while treating his staff like indentured servants. I watched him soothe her with practiced ease, agreeing that yes, this was completely unacceptable. Yes, heads would roll. Yes, he would personally see to it that she received the presidential suite at no additional charge plus complimentary spa services. And I saw the moment his eyes landed on me and knew with sick certainty that I was about to become his scapegoat. He called me over with a curl of his finger like summoning a dog, and I walked across that marble floor feeling every eye in the lobby on me, the guests watching with the casual interest people reserve for entertainment that does not concern them. And when I reached him, he turned that false smile on me with venom behind his eyes. "Ms. Foster," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear, his voice dripping with performative disappointment. "Would you care to explain how Mrs. Blackwell ended up in a room with a broken heating unit and a view of the loading dock instead of the suite she specifically requested?" I opened my mouth to explain that I had not handled her check-in, that I had been at the concierge desk all evening, that this was not even my department, but he cut me off with a raised hand and continued his performance for the gathered audience. "This is exactly the kind of incompetence I have been addressing with you repeatedly," he said, his voice getting louder. "This lackadaisical attitude, this failure to pay attention to details, this complete disregard for the standards we uphold at the Ashford." My face burned with humiliation as guests watched, some with sympathy, but most with the detached curiosity of people watching a reality show, and I wanted to defend myself but knew from experience that anything I said would only make things worse, would give him more ammunition to use against me. "I am sorry," I managed to say, my voice shaking despite my efforts to control it. "There must have been a miscommunication. I will personally ensure that Mrs. Blackwell is taken care of." "Too late for that," Gerald snapped. "The damage is done, our reputation has been compromised, and frankly, Ms. Foster, your performance has been substandard for months now, always requesting time off, always distracted, always making excuses." Each word hit me like a physical blow because I knew what was coming, could see it in his eyes, the satisfaction he took in this public destruction. And I thought about my daughter in the back office and wondered how I was going to explain this to her, how I was going to explain that Mommy lost her job right before Christmas. That was when I saw her, my beautiful Lily, peeking around the corner from the hallway that led to the back offices, her dark curls messy from a day of sitting still, Mr. Buttons clutched to her chest, her green eyes wide and confused as she looked for me. "Mommy," she called out in her high, clear voice that cut through the lobby chatter. "When can we go home? I am hungry." The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by "Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas" playing through the speakers with cruel irony, and I watched Gerald's face transform from performative anger to genuine fury as he stared at my daughter standing in the lobby of his precious five-star hotel. "You brought a child to work," he said, his voice dangerously quiet now. "You brought your child to my hotel, to this establishment. You allowed a child to run around unsupervised while you were supposed to be working." "She was not running around," I said desperately, moving toward Lily, who looked frightened now, sensing the tension. "She was sitting quietly in the office. Daycare was closed, and I had no other options. And I thought just for tonight." "No other options," Gerald repeated, his voice rising again as he played to his audience. "No other options except to treat the Grand Ashford Hotel like your personal daycare, to compromise our professional atmosphere, to expose our guests to your personal problems." Lily started to cry, those big tears rolling down her cheeks, and I picked her up, holding her close, feeling her little body tremble against mine as I tried to soothe her while simultaneously trying to save my job, even though I knew it was already too late. "Please," I said, my own voice breaking now. "It is Christmas Eve. I have nowhere else to go. Just let me finish my shift, and I promise this will never happen again." Gerald smiled then, a cold, cruel smile that made my blood run cold, and I realized he had been waiting for something like this, some excuse to fire me that would make him look justified in front of witnesses. "This is a five-star establishment, Ms. Foster," he said slowly, enunciating each word like he was speaking to a child. "We cater to a certain caliber of clientele. Your personal problems have no place here. You are terminated effective immediately. Security will escort you out." The lobby seemed to tilt around me as the words registered, "Terminated on Christmas Eve with my daughter in my arms, and $53 in my checking account, and rent due in a week, and presents on layaway that I would never be able to afford now." But it is Christmas, I whispered, more to myself than to him. It is Christmas Eve. Should have thought of that before bringing your baggage to work, Gerald said dismissively, already turning away from me, already moving on to more important matters, as he gestured to the security guard near the entrance. The next few minutes passed in a humiliating blur as the security guard, at least looking uncomfortable with his task, gently guided me toward the exit while I carried Lily and tried to shield her face from the staring guests. Tried to maintain some shred of dignity as I was escorted out like a criminal, my coat and purse hastily grabbed from behind the desk by a sympathetic co-worker who pressed them into my arms with tears in her own eyes. The cold hit me as soon as we stepped outside, the night air sharp and bitter, snow falling in fat flakes that would have been beautiful under any other circumstances. And I stood on the sidewalk in front of the hotel, with my daughter in my arms, and my entire world crashing down around me. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see the lobby continuing its celebration, the party uninterrupted by my personal catastrophe, guests laughing and drinking champagne, the massive tree twinkling with those expensive ornaments, Gerald already schmoozing with Mrs. Blackwell like nothing had happened, and I felt a rage so pure it momentarily burned through my despair. What I did not see, could not have known in that moment of devastation, was the man who had been sitting in the corner armchair, watching the entire scene unfold, with eyes the color of dark espresso, a newspaper lowered to his lap, an untouched glass of champagne beside him, catching the light from the chandeliers. Dante Romano had watched Gerald Vance humiliate a woman in front of a lobby full of guests, had watched a little girl cry for her mother, had watched security escort a single mother into the cold on Christmas Eve, and he had said one word very quietly to himself, a word that carried the weight of a death sentence, though no one around him could have known it. Mistake, he had said, and folded his newspaper with precise movements, his jaw tight with a controlled fury that anyone who knew him would have recognized as far more dangerous than any shouting or theatrical display could ever be. I sat on the cold metal bench outside the hotel, with Lily pressed against my side, both of us shivering as snow fell heavier now, fat flakes that stuck to our hair and coats and melted into icy rivulets that ran down our necks. And I tried to think through the panic that threatened to overwhelm me completely because panic would not help. Panic would not feed my daughter or keep a roof over our heads. Panic was a luxury I could not afford, even as it clawed at my throat, making it hard to breathe. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could still see the lobby, that warm golden glow of wealth and celebration, people laughing and drinking and enjoying their Christmas Eve without a single thought for the woman and child they had watched get thrown out into the cold, and the contrast between that warmth and this brutal December night felt like a physical manifestation of every inequality I had spent my life trying to navigate. Lily had stopped crying, but she was so quiet now, too quiet, her small body trembling against mine as she clutched Mr. Buttons with fingers that were already turning pink from the cold despite her mittens. And I wrapped my coat around both of us, even though it did nothing against the wind that cut through the fabric like it was not even there. My phone buzzed in my pocket and I pulled it out with numb fingers, saw my landlord's name on the screen, and felt my stomach drop even further, though I had not thought that was possible, because I knew exactly what this call was going to be about, and I had no good answers to give him. I answered anyway because avoiding it would only make things worse, pressed the phone to my ear, and heard his gruff voice asking where his rent was, reminding me that I was already 2 weeks late, telling me that if I did not have the full amount plus late fees by tomorrow morning, he was starting eviction proceedings because he had bills to pay too, and Christmas or not, he needed his money. I tried to explain about losing my job, tried to ask for just a few more days to figure something out, but he cut me off with the weary irritation of a man who had heard every excuse 1,000 times before and no longer cared about the stories behind them. Tomorrow morning, he repeated. Full amount plus 200 in late fees, or you are out, and he hung up before I could respond, leaving me staring at my phone screen and the banking app I had pulled up that showed $53.17 in my checking account. The Christmas presents I had on layaway at Target, the doll Lily had been asking for since September, and the art supplies and the new winter boots she desperately needed because her current ones were a size too small. All of that would have to stay on layaway forever now because I needed every penny for rent, and even that was not nearly enough. I scrolled through job search apps with shaking hands, even though I knew it was pointless on Christmas Eve. Every listing, either requiring qualifications I did not have or offering wages that would not cover childcare, let alone rent in this city. And I tried calling the two shelters I knew about but got busy signals at both, because apparently I was not the only desperate person in this city tonight. Pedestrians hurried past our bench without making eye contact, their faces buried in scarves and coat collars, arms full of shopping bags and wrapped presents, couples holding hands and families laughing together, all of them moving through their lives without seeing us sitting there freezing, without seeing the little girl whose Christmas had just been destroyed, or the mother who had failed to protect her from this brutal reality. Christmas music drifted faintly from the hotel, Silent Night played on piano, and I almost laughed at the irony because there was nothing silent or holy about this night, nothing peaceful about watching your child shiver and knowing you had nowhere to take her, no way to make this better. "Mommy," Lily whispered, her voice small and scared. "Are we going to sleep outside tonight like the people under the bridge?" "No, baby," I told her, pulling her closer and trying to sound confident, even as my mind raced through impossible options. "We are going to figure something out. Mommy always figures something out. But I did not know how I was going to figure this out, did not know where we would go or what we would do, and the weight of that knowledge sat on my chest like a physical thing, making it hard to breathe. That was when I heard the car, a low purr of an expensive engine that cut through the night sounds, and I looked up to see a sleek black Mercedes pulling to the curb in front of our bench, its dark paint job gleaming wetly under the streetlights that created halos in the falling snow. The car was the kind of vehicle I only ever saw in movies, or when doing valet runs at the hotel, long and low and clearly custom, the kind of car that cost more than I would make in 5 years. And I tensed instinctively because nothing good came from cars like that stopping for people like me. The driver's door opened and a man emerged who looked like he had stepped out of a Secret Service recruitment poster, tall and broad with a stone face and military bearing, wearing a black suit and tie that marked him as professional muscle. And my hand automatically tightened on Lily's shoulder, ready to grab her and run if necessary. The driver moved around the car with precise steps, opened the back passenger door, and stood at attention as another man emerged into the snowy night. He was younger than I expected, maybe early 30s, with dark hair swept back from a face that belonged on magazine covers, sharp cheekbones, and a strong jaw covered in carefully maintained stubble. But it was his eyes that caught me, dark and intense, and focused entirely on me, with an attention that made my breath catch. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my car, perfectly tailored to his tall, lean frame, and he moved with the kind of confidence that came from never being told no, never being denied anything he wanted. The driver opened an umbrella without being asked and held it over the stranger as he approached our bench, and I pulled Lily behind me instinctively, every maternal instinct screaming warnings about strange men in expensive cars appearing out of nowhere. "Ms. Foster," the man said, his voice deep and smooth with an accent I could not quite place, Italian maybe, or something similar, "I would like to offer you a position." I stared at him, my exhausted brain trying to process this surreal turn of events, trying to understand how this stranger knew my name and what kind of position would be offered on a snowy bench on Christmas Eve by a man who looked like he could buy and sell entire city blocks. "I don't know you," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "I am not going anywhere with a stranger." "Smart," he replied, and something that might have been approval flickered in those dark eyes. "Your daughter is watching, learning caution from you. Good." Then he did something unexpected. He crouched down to Lily's level, his expensive suit touching the snow-covered sidewalk, and looked at her with genuine interest rather than the dismissive glance most adults gave children. "What is your name?" he asked her gently. Lily peeked out from behind my legs, clutching Mr. Buttons to her chest, and I saw her natural friendliness warring with her fear. "Lily," she whispered, "like the flower, this is Mr. Buttons." She held out her stuffed reindeer and the man examined it seriously like it was a real introduction. "Mr. Buttons looks cold," he said. "So do you." Then he stood and looked at me again, and I saw the driver had moved closer with the umbrella, creating a dry space above me and Lily that suddenly made me realize how wet we had gotten sitting in the falling snow. "I own the Ashford," the man said as of 2 hours ago. I felt my mouth fall open, my mind struggling to process this information because people did not just buy hotels, certainly not in 2 hours, certainly not the Grand Ashford, which was part of a chain worth millions. "What?" I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. "Gerald Vance no longer works for me," he continued, his tone matter-of-fact like he was discussing the weather rather than turning my world upside down again. "You do, if you want the position." This had to be some kind of joke, some cruel prank. Or maybe I had passed out from stress and was hallucinating on this bench, because things like this did not happen in real life. Mysterious, handsome strangers did not appear with job offers after you got fired. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice shaking. "What do you want?" "Dante Romano," he said, extending his hand in a formal gesture that seemed absurd under the circumstances. "And I want to offer you a job, housing, benefits, everything you need to take care of your daughter." I did not take his hand, did not move except to pull Lily closer, because this felt wrong somehow, too good to be true, and I had learned the hard way that when something seemed too good to be true, it usually was. "Why?" I asked. "Why would you help someone you don't even know?" He was quiet for a moment, his dark eyes studying me with an intensity that made me want to look away, but I forced myself to hold his gaze. "I was in the lobby tonight," he said finally. "I saw what happened. I saw how that man treated you and your daughter." His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "I do not tolerate that kind of behavior, especially not in establishments that bear my name." "That still does not explain why you would help me specifically," I said. "There are probably dozens of people he has treated badly. Why me?" "Because you were kind to that elderly couple even after being humiliated," he said. "Because your daughter was well-behaved and quiet when most children would have been running around causing chaos. Because you tried to protect her from seeing you cry." He paused. "Because I can." The driver, who had remained silent this entire time, shifted slightly, and I saw him open the umbrella wider to cover all three of us as the snow fell harder. "Sir," he said quietly, his voice carrying a British accent, "the car is warm." Dante nodded and looked back at me. "You have a choice, Ms. Foster," he said. "You can sit here in the snow trying to figure out how to keep yourself and your daughter safe tonight, or you can accept my offer and let me help you." I looked at Lily, at her small face pinched with cold, at the way she was trying so hard to be brave, even though I knew she was scared and confused and cold. I looked at the hotel lobby visible through the windows, that warmth and light that had been my workplace just an hour ago. I looked at this stranger, this Dante Romano, who claimed to have bought a hotel in 2 hours just so he could fire my former boss and offer me a job. "This is crazy," I said, my voice breaking. "This does not happen in real life." "And yet here I am," he replied. "And there is my car, warm and dry, and I am offering you a way forward." He pulled a business card from his pocket and held it out. "You do not have to decide everything tonight. Just accept a ride, get warm, let your daughter get warm, and we can discuss the details." I stared at that card, at the embossed lettering I could barely read in the dim light, and felt the weight of impossible choices pressing down on me. Every rational part of my brain screamed that this was dangerous, that I should not get in a car with a strange man no matter how expensive his suit or how kind his words. But the part of me that was a mother, the part that felt Lily trembling against me and knew I had nowhere else to go, that part was stronger. Just to warm up Lily, I heard myself say, just for a little while. Dante's expression did not change, but something softened in his eyes. "Of course," he said, and gestured toward the car where the driver, James apparently, already had the door open. I stood on shaking legs, picked up Lily who wrapped her arms around my neck, and walked toward that Mercedes feeling like I was stepping off a cliff with no idea if there was ground below or just empty air. The interior was warm and smelled of leather and something expensive I could not identify, and Lily immediately pressed against me, soaking in the heat. Dante slid in across from us in the spacious back seat, and James closed the door with a solid thunk that felt final somehow, like a door closing on my old life. "Where are we going?" I asked as the car pulled smoothly away from the curb. "Somewhere safe," Dante replied. "Somewhere warm. Somewhere your daughter can have a proper Christmas." And even though I knew I should ask more questions, should demand concrete answers, should probably jump out of this moving car and take my chances on the street, I found myself leaning back against the soft leather and closing my eyes just for a moment, just long enough to catch my breath, while Lily's shivering slowly subsided and the hotel disappeared behind us into the snowy night. The drive took 30 minutes, but felt both longer and shorter somehow. Lily falling asleep against me within the first 10 minutes, her small body finally relaxing as the warmth seeped into her bones, and exhaustion claimed her, while I stayed rigidly awake watching the city lights give way to darker roads lined with bare trees, and eventually to gates that looked like they belonged to a fortress, or a prison, or both. James spoke quietly into a phone in Italian, and the gates swung open smoothly, revealing a long driveway lined with lights that illuminated falling snow and manicured grounds that seemed to stretch forever into the darkness. And my heart hammered in my chest as I realized just how far from the city we had come, how isolated this place was, how completely I had put myself and my daughter in the hands of a stranger whose last name I barely knew. The house that emerged from the snowy darkness was not a house at all, but a mansion, sprawling and elegant with warm lights glowing from dozens of windows, stone and brick construction that spoke of old money and established power. The kind of place I had only seen in magazines or movies about people whose lives were so far removed from mine, we might as well be different species. The car pulled up to a front entrance with columns and carved wooden doors that probably cost more than everything I had ever owned combined. And I felt panic rising again because this was too much, too far beyond anything I understood. And I should tell James to turn around and take us back to the city, even if that meant sleeping on that bench, because at least I understood that world. Dante must have sensed my tension, because he leaned forward slightly, his dark eyes catching mine in the dim interior light. "You are safe here," he said quietly. "I give you my word. Nothing will happen to you or your daughter that you do not want to happen." I wanted to ask what his word was worth, wanted to demand he take us back immediately, but Lily stirred against me, making a small sound in her sleep, and I knew I could not drag her back out into the cold. Not tonight, not when she was finally warm and resting. "Just to warm up," I repeated, my voice shaking, "just for a little while and then we need to go." "Of course," Dante agreed easily, though something in his expression suggested he knew I would not be leaving anytime soon. James opened the door and I carried Lily up stone steps to those massive doors which opened before we reached them, revealing a woman in her 60s with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, and kind eyes that immediately went to Lily sleeping in my arms. "This is Sophia," Dante said. "She manages the house. She will take care of your daughter while we talk." Every maternal instinct I had screamed against, handing my child to a stranger. But Sophia approached with such genuine warmth, such obvious concern, as she looked at Lily's flushed, sleeping face. that I found myself hesitating rather than refusing outright. "The poor little thing is exhausted," Sophia said in accented English. Italian, I thought. "Let me take her to the kitchen. I will make hot chocolate and cookies. She can rest somewhere warm." I looked at Dante, who nodded slightly. "Sophia raised my son," he said quietly, "and the 3 children of my cousins. She is trustworthy." I did not know why that reassurance mattered, but it did, and I found myself carefully transferring Lily into Sophia's capable arms, watching as the older woman cradled my daughter with practiced ease and carried her down a hallway, murmuring softly in Italian. The entry hall was beautiful, in a way that felt lived in rather than like a museum. Hardwood floors covered with worn Persian rugs, paintings on the walls that looked old and valuable but not ostentatious, a curved staircase leading to upper floors, and the scent of something baking that made my empty stomach clench with hunger I had been ignoring. Dante led me to a room off the main hall, his study apparently, and I stepped into a space that felt masculine but comfortable, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined with volumes that looked read rather than decorative, a massive desk covered with papers and files, leather chairs positioned near a fireplace where logs crackled and popped, sending warmth into the room. Snow was visible through tall windows, the grounds beyond lit with subtle landscaping lights that illuminated gardens and paths, and what might have been a pond or fountain in the distance. "Sit," Dante said, gesturing to one of the leather chairs near the fire, and I sank into it, feeling my body protest the comfort after so many hours of tension. He moved to a side table and poured 2 glasses of amber liquid from a crystal decanter, brought one to me. "Whiskey," he said. "You look like you need it." I did not normally drink hard alcohol, but I took the glass and sipped, feeling the burn all the way down, and the warmth that followed, and some of the shaking in my hands subsided. Dante sat in the chair across from me, his own glass held loosely, firelight playing across his sharp features and making his dark eyes almost black. "You said you own the Ashford as of 2 hours ago," I said, needing to break the silence, needing to understand what was happening. "How is that even possible?" "Money makes many things possible," he replied. "I had been looking at acquiring the Ashford for other reasons. Your situation simply accelerated my timeline." "What other reasons?" I asked. "And why would you accelerate a business deal because of one fired employee?" He was quiet for a moment, studying his whiskey like it held answers. "I was at the hotel for a meeting with the previous owners," he said finally, discussing terms of acquisition. "I happened to be in the lobby when that scene occurred." His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "I do not forget things I witness, especially injustice." "That still does not explain why you helped me specifically," I said, echoing my earlier question. "You could have just fired Gerald. You did not need to track me down and bring me here. Why me? Why help a complete stranger?" The silence stretched long enough that I thought he would not answer, and I watched the firelight flicker across his face, highlighting the sharp planes and shadows, making him look both younger and older at the same time. "My mother was a hotel maid," he said finally, his voice so quiet I had to lean forward to hear. "Single mother. She worked 3 jobs trying to keep us fed and housed in a city that did not care if we lived or died. When I was 7, her manager fired her for bringing me to work. It was December 23rd. I felt my breath catch because I knew where this story was going, could see the pain flickering behind his controlled expression. "We spent Christmas in our car," he continued. "She tried to keep me warm with her own coat while she shivered through the night, tried to pretend it was an adventure, tried to protect me from understanding how desperate our situation was." "I am sorry," I whispered, "but that does not explain." "She died that winter," he said, cutting me off. "Pneumonia. We were living in that car for 2 weeks before she finally got sick enough to go to the hospital, and by then it was too late." His hand tightened on his glass. If someone had helped her, if someone had given her a chance, if someone had seen her as a human being rather than a problem to be disposed of. He stopped, visibly gathering control. "I cannot change the past, but I can change your present. The raw emotion in his voice made my chest tight, because I understood that pain, that helpless rage at a world that ground down the vulnerable, that looked away from suffering because acknowledging it was inconvenient. "And what do you get out of it?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "What do you want from me?" He met my eyes and something passed between us, some understanding or recognition. "Peace," he said simply. "For one night, knowing a child will not spend Christmas cold and afraid. Knowing I did what no one did for my mother." The words hit me harder than any elaborate explanation could have because they were so simple, so honest, so completely unexpected from a man who looked like he could buy and sell the world. I looked around the study, at the family photos on the shelves that showed a young, dark-haired boy with a woman who had his same eyes and smile, at the books and papers that suggested a man who worked and read and lived in this space rather than just using it for show. "You mentioned a position," I said, forcing myself back to practical matters because I could not afford to be swept away by emotion or sympathy. "What exactly are you offering?" "Personal hospitality coordinator," Dante said, his tone shifting back to business. "You would manage my household hospitality needs, coordinate with Sophia, handle any guests or events, essentially do what you did at the hotel, but for my private residences." "How many residences?" I asked. "3," he said. "This estate, a penthouse in the city, a house in the Hamptons. You would primarily work from here." "And the salary?" I asked, because I needed to hear him say it, needed to know if this was real or some fever dream. 120,000 per year, he said calmly. Housing provided, full benefits including health and dental, childcare provided either here or at facilities near wherever you are working. Retirement contributions, 4 weeks paid vacation. I laughed, I could not help it, a slightly hysterical sound that bordered on crying. "That is insane," I said. "That is more than twice what I made at the hotel, plus housing, plus childcare, that is." I stopped, suspicion rising. What is the catch? Men do not just hand out 6-figure jobs to strangers. What do you really want? Instead of answering directly, Dante stood and moved to his desk, picked up a manila folder that had been sitting there, and brought it to me. I opened it with shaking hands and felt my blood run cold as I saw my entire life laid out in neat typed pages. My full name, Maya Elizabeth Foster, my address, my employment history, my bank statements showing the pathetic balance, my late husband's death certificate from 3 years ago when his heart gave out at 31, leaving me with a mountain of medical debt, my volunteer work at the Children's Hospital, Lily's daycare records, even my parking tickets from 2 years ago. "You investigated me," I said, my voice flat. "You had someone dig into my entire life." "I research all potential employees," Dante said calmly. "I needed to know who you were, what your situation was, whether you were trustworthy." "This is not research, this is stalking," I said, standing up, my fear transforming into anger, because anger was easier than terror. "You had no right." "I had every right," he replied, his tone still maddeningly calm. "You are asking me to bring you into my home, around my family and staff. I would be negligent if I did not know exactly who you were. The dossier says you are hardworking, honest, good with people, you have no criminal record, you volunteer your limited free time helping sick children, you are drowning in medical debt from your late husband, but you have never missed a payment even when it meant you went without meals." He paused. "It says you are exactly the kind of person I want working for me." I sat back down because my legs felt weak, staring at this stranger who knew more about my life than most of my friends did, who had somehow compiled all of this information in a matter of hours. "What business are you in, really?" I asked, because normal businessmen do not have this kind of access to information this quickly. "Import-export," he said. "Family business. We have resources that make certain things easier." That told me nothing and everything at the same time. Because I was not stupid. I understood that men with this kind of power and money and resources usually came by them through channels that were not entirely legal. But I was also desperate, and my daughter was in the kitchen with a kind housekeeper eating cookies, and for the first time in months, she was safe and warm. I looked at the fire, at the snow falling outside the windows, at the dossier on my lap that proved this man could destroy me if he wanted to, but instead was offering me a lifeline. "Why should I trust you?" I asked quietly. "You should not," Dante replied honestly. "You should be cautious and careful, and protect yourself and your daughter. But you should also recognize when someone is offering genuine help with no expectation of anything beyond professional work in return." He leaned forward. "I am not asking you to trust me completely tonight. I am asking you to stay for Christmas. Let your daughter have a warm bed and a safe place. Let yourself rest, and then we can discuss details and contracts, and you can make an informed decision." From down the hall, I could hear Sophia's voice, soft and melodic, singing something in Italian, and underneath it the sound of Lily laughing, actually laughing, a sound I had not heard in weeks. That sound broke something in me, shattered the last of my resistance, because how could I take her away from the first genuine joy she had felt in so long? "Just for Christmas," I heard myself say, "just to give her one good day." Dante's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Just for Christmas," he agreed, "and we can figure out the rest after." I nodded and sipped my whiskey and stared into the fire while snow fell outside and my daughter laughed in a stranger's kitchen, and my entire life hung balanced on the edge of a choice that terrified me, but that I knew I was going to make, because sometimes survival meant accepting help from unexpected places, even when every instinct screamed danger. I woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows, disoriented for a moment, before memories of last night crashed back, and I sat up in the most comfortable bed I had ever slept in, silk sheets and down comforters in a guest suite that was larger than my entire apartment, decorated in soft creams and golds with furniture that looked antique and probably cost more than my yearly salary used to be. Lily was still asleep. Beside me, her dark curls spread across the pillow, one small hand clutching Mr. Button's, and I watched her peaceful face for a long moment, feeling a complicated mix of gratitude and fear, because we were in a stranger's house, in a world I did not understand, dependent on the kindness of a man who had investigated my entire life and admitted to running some kind of import-export family business that probably meant exactly what I thought it meant. But she was warm and safe and sleeping peacefully for the first time in weeks. So I pushed aside my fears and slipped out of bed, found the bathroom that was all marble and gold fixtures, showered in water pressure that felt like luxury, and dressed in the clothes someone had cleaned and pressed overnight, along with providing new underwear and toiletries that were better quality than anything I had ever bought for myself. When Lily woke up, she was confused at first, asking where we were, but then she remembered the nice man and the kind lady with cookies, and she smiled so brightly it made my chest ache. We went downstairs together, following the sounds of movement and the smell of coffee and baking, and found ourselves in a massive living room that took my breath away because sometime during the night, someone had decorated a Christmas tree that had to be 15 feet tall, covered in ornaments and lights and tinsel, and underneath it were presents, dozens of wrapped presents in shiny paper with elaborate bows. Lily gasped and grabbed my hand, her eyes huge. "Mommy," she whispered, "did Santa find us?" Before I could answer, Dante emerged from what looked like a dining room, dressed casually in dark jeans and a sweater that somehow made him look even more attractive than the suit had, his hair slightly messy like he had been running his hands through it. And when he saw Lily's face looking at the tree, his entire expression softened. "Merry Christmas, Lily," he said, crouching down to her level again the way he had last night. "It looks like Santa knew exactly where to find you." "Are all those for me?" Lily asked, her voice full of wonder and disbelief because she had never seen so many presents in her life. "Some are for you," Dante said. "Some are for your mother. Some are for Sophia and James and the other people who work here. But yes, Santa brought quite a few with your name on them." Lily looked up at me for permission, and I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat as she ran to the tree and started examining tags with the serious concentration only a 5-year-old could muster. "Mr. Dante," she called out. "This one says Lily. Can I open it?" "You can open all the ones with your name," Dante replied, standing and moving to stand beside me, and I felt his presence like heat, too close and too intense. "You did not have to do this," I said quietly, my voice shaking because this was too much. The presence, the kindness, the casual way he had made my daughter's Christmas magical when I had failed so completely. "Yes, I did," he replied simply, watching Lily tear into wrapping paper with the enthusiasm of a child who had thought Christmas was cancelled. Every child deserves this. The next hour was a blur of wrapping paper and squeals of delight as Lily opened present after present. The doll she had been asking for, art supplies, new clothes, books, toys, everything she could possibly want and more. And I watched her joy with tears streaming down my face that I kept trying to wipe away before anyone noticed. Dante sat on the floor with her, showing her how different toys worked, his expensive sweater getting covered in glitter, and his face more relaxed than I had seen it, laughing at something Lily said about Mr. Buttons needing his own present. And I saw glimpses of the boy he must have been before life hardened him into whatever he was now. Sophia appeared with coffee and pastries, her kind eyes taking in the scene with obvious approval, and she gestured for me to follow her to the kitchen while Lily was distracted building something with blocks. "Come help me with dinner," Sophia said, her accent thicker than Dante's, and I followed her into a kitchen that was all professional equipment and warm lighting, copper pots hanging from racks, and the smell of something amazing roasting in the oven. As we worked together, Sophia peeling potatoes while I chopped vegetables under her direction, she talked about Dante in a way that felt deliberate, like she wanted me to understand something. "He was such a serious boy," she said. "After his mama died, he never smiled, never played, just worked and studied and became hard. But today I see him laugh with your little girl, and I think maybe he remembers how to be human again." "What kind of work does he do?" I asked carefully, trying to sound casual, this import-export business. Sophia gave me a look that said she knew exactly what I was really asking. "The family business," she said. "The Romano family is old, powerful, they protect what is theirs, and they do not forgive insults." Her hands moved efficiently, decades of practice evident. "But Dante, he is different from his father, from his uncles. He has rules, lines he will not cross. He tries to be better than what he was born into." "That does not really answer my question," I said. "No," Sophia agreed, "but it is all the answer I can give you. The rest you must learn from him." We worked in comfortable silence after that, preparing a feast that seemed excessive for just a few people. But Sophia explained that some of the staff who lived on the property would be joining us, that Dante insisted on family meals for holidays. The domestic normalcy of it, the cooking and prep work, and Sophia humming Italian songs, made it easy to forget the underlying danger I sensed in this house, to pretend this was just a normal Christmas with normal people. Lily came running into the kitchen mid-afternoon, her face flushed with happiness. "Mommy, Mr. Dante says we are going to have a big dinner, and I can help set the table. Is that okay?" "Of course, baby," I said, and watched her run back out chattering about fancy plates and napkins. "Mr. Dante," Sophia said with amusement. "She likes him." "I know," I replied, and that was part of what terrified me because when we left here, and we would have to leave eventually, Lily would be heartbroken. That was when I heard voices from the front of the house, male voices that were not friendly, and my body tensed automatically. Sophia's expression changed, became carefully neutral. "Stay here," she said quietly, and moved toward the kitchen door. But I followed her despite the warning, my maternal instincts overriding caution, and peered around the corner to see something that made my blood run cold. Gerald Vance stood in the entry hall flanked by two large men in dark suits who were clearly not there. As his friends, his face was bruised and swollen, one eye nearly shut, his expensive clothes rumpled and stained, and he looked absolutely terrified. Dante stood in front of him, perfectly calm, perfectly controlled, but there was something in his posture that radiated danger. "You came to apologize," Dante said, his voice quiet and cold. "So apologize." "I am sorry," Gerald stammered, his voice shaking. "I am so sorry for how I treated Miss Foster. It was inappropriate and cruel, and I—" "Louder," Dante interrupted. "I want everyone in this house to hear you." Gerald's good eye found me standing in the doorway, and something like relief and fear mixed in his expression. "Ms. Foster," he said louder, his voice breaking, "I am profoundly sorry for firing you on Christmas Eve, for humiliating you in front of guests, for treating you with such disrespect. You were an excellent employee, and I let my own petty power go to my head, and I—" "That is enough," Dante said. "Now leave my property, and if I ever hear of you treating another employee the way you treated her, I will hear about it, and you will not enjoy our next conversation." Gerald practically ran for the door, his escorts following, and then Dante turned and saw me standing there watching, and his expression flickered through several emotions too fast to identify before settling back into calm. "You forced him to come here," I said, not quite a question. "I strongly suggested it," Dante replied, walking toward me, "and I made certain he understood that his behavior has consequences." "You had him beaten," I said, looking at his bruised face. "You had your men hurt him." Dante did not deny it, did not try to soften it. "He needed to understand the severity of his mistake," he said, "and he needed to apologize to you properly." I should have felt vindicated, should have been glad that Gerald had gotten what he deserved. But instead, I just felt sick, because this was not justice, it was revenge, and there was a difference. Lily appeared from the living room asking about dinner, and I forced a smile, told her it would be ready soon, watched her skip back to her toys, oblivious to what had just happened. That evening, as we sat down to dinner, the table laden with food and surrounded by Sophia and James and a few other staff members whose names I tried to remember, Lily sitting beside Dante and chattering about her presence, I tried to recapture the peace of the morning, but it felt hollow now, tainted by the reality I had witnessed. The meal was delicious and everyone was kind, and Lily was so happy. But I kept seeing Gerald's beaten face, kept wondering what kind of man I had accepted help from. After dinner, Dante excused himself to take a phone call, his expression changing as he looked at his phone screen, becoming hard and cold again. "Go to my study," he said in Italian to whoever called, his tone clipped and commanding, and he strode from the dining room, leaving me to help Sophia clear dishes while Lily fell asleep on the couch, surrounded by her new toys. I was carrying plates to the kitchen when I heard his voice from the study, the door not quite closed, speaking rapid Italian in a tone I had not heard from him before, harsh and final, and completely devoid of the warmth he had shown earlier. I should not have stopped, should not have listened, but something made me pause in the hallway, and I heard him say in English, "Handle it, no witnesses, make it look like an accident." My hands started shaking, the plates rattling, and Sophia appeared beside me taking them before I could drop them. "Go talk to him," she said quietly. "You need to hear it from him, not assume." But I knew what I had heard, knew what those words meant, and when I pushed open the study door, Dante was standing by the window, looking out at the dark grounds, his phone still in his hand, and he turned to face me with an expression that was resigned. "That phone call," I said, my voice shaking. "What did you order someone to do?" He was quiet for a moment, his dark eyes studying me, and I saw him make a decision not to lie. "Solve a problem," he said finally, permanently. You mean kill someone? I said, the word catching in my throat. I mean protect what is mine, Dante replied, stepping toward me. This family, this home, the people in it, including you and Lily now. We are not yours to protect, I said, backing up. We are not. We are not part of your world. You have been part of it since you accepted my offer, Dante said, his voice intensifying. Since you walked through that door, since I decided you were worth protecting. I felt tears streaming down my face because this was exactly what I had feared, exactly what I had known deep down. That his help came with strings, that his world was violent and dark, and I had brought my daughter into it. Who are you really? I whispered. I am Dante Romano, he said, his voice softening slightly. My family controls certain business interests in this city and beyond. We operate in spaces where the law cannot or will not reach. We protect our people, and we eliminate threats. His jaw tightened. That is who I am. That is what I do, and I will not apologize for it or pretend to be something I am not. The fire had burned low, casting shadows across his face, and outside I could hear wind picking up, snow beginning to fall again. You ordered someone killed tonight, I said, on Christmas, while my daughter was playing with toys you bought her. The man I ordered handled was planning to hurt people I care about, Dante said. He was a threat that needed to be neutralized. Would you prefer I let him act and then deal with the consequences? I do not know, I said honestly. I do not know anything anymore. He moved closer, and I did not back away this time, just stood there trembling while he looked down at me with an expression I could not read. You are afraid of me now, he said, not quite a question. Yes, I whispered. Good, he replied. You should be. I am dangerous, but not to you, never to you or Lily. How can I believe that? I asked. How can I trust that you will not decide someday that we are a problem that needs to be handled? Because I keep my word, Dante said. And I gave you my word that you are safe here, that nothing will happen to you that you do not want, and I have never broken my word. We stood there in the darkening study, while shadows lengthened and the fire died to embers, and somewhere in the house, my daughter slept peacefully, surrounded by presents from a man who had just ordered someone killed, and I knew I had a choice to make: stay in this world, knowing what it meant, or take Lily, and run back to the cold streets, an uncertain future we had escaped. The problem was I did not know which choice would keep her safer anymore. I spent the night in that luxurious guest suite, staring at the ceiling while Lily slept peacefully beside me, my mind racing through impossible options and coming back again and again to the only conclusion that made sense: we had to leave, had to get away from Dante Romano and his dangerous world before we became so entangled we could never escape. The morning light found me packing our few belongings into the plastic bag that had held our clothes, moving quietly so as not to wake Lily, trying to figure out how I would explain to her that we were leaving this warm, safe place to go back to uncertainty and cold. I had just finished dressing when someone knocked softly on the door, and my heart jumped because I had hoped to slip out before anyone noticed, before I had to face Dante and his dark eyes, and the pull I felt toward him despite everything I knew. The door opened before I could respond, and James stood there, his expression grave and urgent. "Ms. Foster," he said in his clipped British accent. "Mr. Romano needs to see you immediately. It is urgent." "I am actually just leaving," I said, lifting the plastic bag. "Thank you for your hospitality, but we really need to go." "Ms. Foster," James repeated, his tone brooking no argument. "It is about your safety. You need to come now." Something in his voice made my stomach drop, and I followed him down hallways I had not seen before, deeper into the house, Lily still sleeping behind us, until we reached a room that looked like something from a spy movie. Wall-to-wall monitors showing security footage from what must have been dozens of cameras, men in dark suits sitting at consoles with earpieces and serious expressions, and Dante standing in the center of it all, watching a screen that showed grainy footage of a building I recognized, with sick certainty, as my apartment complex. "Someone has been asking about you," Dante said without turning around, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Two men showed up at your building yesterday afternoon asking the super which unit was yours, asking about your schedule, asking about your daughter." The screen changed to show two large men in dark coats talking to Mr. Peterson, my elderly superintendent, who looked confused and nervous. "3 hours ago they came back," Dante continued, and the footage switched to show the same two men forcing open my apartment door, disappearing inside. The next clip showed them tearing my apartment apart, overturning furniture, ripping open drawers, clearly searching for something. My legs felt weak and I grabbed the back of a chair to steady myself as I watched strangers violate my home, my safe space, the place where Lily's toys still sat in her small bedroom, and my bills sat on the counter, and my whole life had been before it shattered 2 days ago. "What are they looking for?" I whispered. Dante finally turned to face me, and his expression was harder than I had ever seen it. "Gerald Vance was not just a petty tyrant," he said. "He was embezzling from the hotel for years, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and he had a partner, Victor Castellano." The name meant nothing to me but the way everyone in the room reacted. A subtle tension told me it should. "Who is Victor Castellano?" I asked. "A rival," Dante said flatly. "Someone who operates in similar spaces to my family, but without our rules, without our code. He is violent and unpredictable, and he thinks you have evidence of their embezzlement." "I do not have anything," I said desperately. "I did not even know Gerald was stealing. I just worked the front desk." "Victor does not care what you know," Dante replied. "He cares what Gerald told him you know before we persuaded Gerald to be honest with us." His jaw tightened. "Gerald apparently suggested you might have documents, files, evidence that could implicate both of them. He threw you under the bus trying to save himself." "So now this Victor person thinks I can hurt him," I said, my voice shaking, "thinks I am a threat." "Now Victor thinks you need to be eliminated," Dante corrected, "along with anyone who might have seen whatever evidence he thinks you have, which means your daughter is also at risk." The words hit me like a physical blow, and I felt my knees buckle, would have fallen if James had not caught my elbow and guided me into a chair. "Lily," I gasped. "We have to get Lily. We have to." "She is safe," Dante said, moving to kneel in front of me, his hands on the arms of my chair bracketing me in. "Sophia is with her, and there are 3 armed guards outside that playroom. No one is getting to your daughter." His dark eyes bored into mine. "But you need to understand the situation. If you leave here, if you try to go back to your normal life, Victor will find you within hours. He has people everywhere, connections in places you would not expect, and he will not hesitate to hurt you or Lily to protect himself." "This is insane," I said, my voice rising. "I am not a criminal. I do not know anything. I cannot." "Truth is irrelevant," Dante interrupted. "Victor believes you are a threat. Perception is reality in our world, and right now you are perceived as someone who needs to disappear." "So what am I supposed to do?" I asked, my voice breaking. "What? I am a prisoner now, just a different kind than before." "Prisoners do not get a choice," Dante said, his voice softening slightly. "I am giving you one. Stay here under my protection where you and Lily are safe, or leave and try to survive on your own when Victor's men are actively hunting you, stay alive, or prove a point about independence." I stared at him, at this man who had bought a hotel to fire my abuser, who had given my daughter the best Christmas of her life, who had ordered someone killed last night and was now telling me I had no real choice at all. "What about Lily?" I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "She is 5 years old. She does not understand any of this. She keeps asking when we can go home, and I do not know what to tell her." Which is why you stay, Dante said. And I saw something raw flash across his face, something that looked like the memory of his own childhood fear. I have 30 men on this property, armed and trained. Victor has connections, but he will not risk open war with the Romano family. Not over something this small. Small, I repeated, feeling anger cut through my fear. My life is small to you. No, Dante said intensely, leaning closer. Your life is everything. Victor's grudge is small. Do not confuse the two. We stared at each other, his face inches from mine. And I felt that pull again. That dangerous attraction that had nothing to do with gratitude, and everything to do with the way he looked at me like I mattered, like I was worth protecting, like I was his. One of the men at the monitors spoke up. Sir, we have movement on the perimeter, 2 vehicles approaching from the east access road. Dante stood immediately, his entire demeanor shifting to command mode. Positions, he said crisply. No one gets through the gates, non-lethal unless absolutely necessary. I want at least one alive for questioning. The room erupted into controlled chaos, men moving with military precision, speaking into radios and clipped tones, and I watched screens flicker to life showing the estate grounds from multiple angles. Saw armed guards taking positions, saw the 2 vehicles Dante's man had mentioned stopped at the gates. James appeared beside me. Come, he said. We need to move you to the safe room. I do not want a safe room, I said, standing on shaking legs. I want my daughter. She is already there, James replied. Sophia moved her at the first alert. Come now, please, Ms. Foster. I followed him through hallways that seemed endless, downstairs I had not known existed, into a basement level that was clearly designed for exactly this kind of situation, reinforced walls and heavy doors, and a room that looked comfortable, but was obviously built to withstand an attack. Lily was sitting on a couch with Sophia, coloring in one of her new books, and she looked up when I entered. Mommy, she said brightly, Miss Sophia says we are playing a game. We have to stay in this special room for a while. That is right, baby, I said, moving to her and pulling her into my arms. Just a game. But my eyes met Sophia's over Lily's head, and I saw the older woman's concern, saw her hand resting on something under her cardigan that I realized with a start was probably a gun. Dante entered the room moments later, his phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Italian before switching to English. I do not care what he wants, Dante said coldly into the phone. He comes to my home, threatens my people, he gets nothing. You tell Victor Castellano that Maya Foster is under Romano protection now, and if he has a problem with that, he can take it up with me directly. He listened for a moment, his jaw tight. No, you listen. She is mine to protect, and I do not negotiate with men who threaten children. You have 10 minutes to get those vehicles off my property before I stop being polite. He ended the call and looked at me with an expression that was part anger and part something else, something possessive that should have frightened me, but instead made me feel safer than I had in years. They are leaving, he said. Victor got the message. Just like that, I asked. They just leave. Just like that, Dante confirmed, because Victor knows that coming after you here means war with my family, and he is not prepared for that fight, not when he has bigger problems to worry about. He moved closer, crouching down to Lily's level. How are you doing, princess? He asked gently. I am sorry about the scary game. It is okay, Mr. Dante, Lily said seriously. Mommy says sometimes we have to be brave, even when we are scared. That is very wise, Dante said, looking at me with an expression that made my breath catch. Your mother is a smart woman. When can we go home? Lily asked, and the question hung in the air like a weight. This is your home now, Dante said before I could respond. If you want it to be, you and your mother can stay here where it is safe and warm, and no one will hurt you. Lily looked at me with those big green eyes full of trust. Can we stay, Mommy? She asked. Please, I like it here. I like Miss Sophia and Mr. Dante and all my presents. I felt tears burning behind my eyes, because what choice did I really have? How could I take her back out into danger when safety was right here, even if it came with complications I did not fully understand? Yes, baby, I heard myself say. We can stay. Lily cheered and went back to her coloring, already accepting this new reality with the adaptability of childhood, and Dante stood, his hand briefly touching my shoulder. I will keep you safe, he said quietly. Both of you. I promise. I know, I replied, and realized with something like shock that I believed him. This man who ordered people killed and ran a criminal empire believed him more than I had believed anyone in a long time. The next few hours passed in a strange limbo, staying in the safe room while Dante's men secured the property and made certain Victor's people were truly gone, Lily playing with her toys oblivious to the danger while Sophia made us tea, and I tried not to think about how completely my life had changed in just 3 days. When we finally emerged back into the main house, it was evening, guards visible at every window, men with earpieces speaking quietly into radios. The estate transformed into the fortress it had apparently always been beneath the elegant facade. Dante found me in the library, where I had gone seeking some semblance of normalcy among the books. He leaned against the doorframe watching me for a moment before speaking. You are angry, he said. I am terrified, I corrected, turning to face him. I am trapped, and I am grateful, and I am furious, and I do not know how to feel about any of this. That is fair, Dante said, moving into the room. I did not plan for this, for you to become a target, but now that you are, I will do whatever it takes to protect you. Why? I asked, the question I kept coming back to. Why do you care so much about someone you just met? He was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes studying me with an intensity that made my skin feel too warm. Because when I saw you on that bench with your daughter, he said finally, I saw my mother. I saw myself. I saw a chance to be the person I wish had existed for us. He moved closer. And because in the 3 days you have been here, you have made this house feel like a home instead of just a building, because you are brave and strong and you love your daughter with a fierceness I recognize, because... He stopped, jaw tightening. Because I want you to stay, not just because you have to, but because you want to. I stared at him, at this dangerous, beautiful man who was offering me safety and something that looked dangerously like more. And I knew I was standing at a crossroads where every direction led somewhere I could not come back from. The smart thing would be to keep my distance, to accept his protection but nothing else, to remember that his world was violent and dark and not somewhere I wanted to build a life. But standing there in his library with guards patrolling outside, and my daughter safe upstairs and his eyes on me like I was something precious, I realized the smart thing and the thing I wanted were not the same thing at all. Section 6. The Resolution and Choice. 3 days passed in a strange, suspended reality where the estate became simultaneously a prison and a sanctuary, where armed guards patrolled the grounds. But inside, Sophia hummed in the kitchen, and Lily played with her toys, and Dante and I circled each other like planets caught in gravitational pull, drawn together by forces neither of us seemed able to resist. The first night he found me in the library unable to sleep, staring at books without seeing them. And he sat beside me not saying anything for a long time, before quietly telling me about his mother, about the hotel where she worked, and the manager who destroyed them, and the cold car where she died, trying to keep him warm. I told him about my husband, about the heart condition we could not afford to treat properly, about the medical bills that buried me, and the loneliness of raising Lily alone in a city that did not care if we survived or disappeared. We talked until dawn broke over the snow-covered grounds, and I realized I had told him things I had never told anyone, vulnerabilities I usually kept locked away, and he had listened like my words mattered, like I mattered. The second night he insisted on teaching me self-defense in the estate gym, his hands on my waist showing me how to break a hold, his body close enough that I could feel his heat and smell his cologne, and my concentration shattered every time he touched me. "You need to focus," he said, voice rough. "If someone grabs you like this, you need to." "I know," I interrupted, breathless, "but you are very distracting." His dark eyes met mine and something passed between us, acknowledgement of what was building, but he stepped back and we continued the lesson, though the air felt charged with everything we were not saying. The third night we had dinner together after Lily fell asleep, just the two of us at the huge dining table, and Sophia served us with knowing looks before disappearing and leaving us alone with wine and candlelight and the weight of unspoken feelings. He asked about my dreams, what I had wanted before life forced me into survival mode, and I found myself talking about the college degree I never finished. The idea I once had of being a teacher, the person I might have been if circumstances had been different. "You could still be that person," Dante said quietly. "You could finish your degree, I would pay for it, support you while you studied." "Why would you do that?" I asked, and he looked at me for a long moment before answering. "Because you deserve the chance to become who you were meant to be," he said. "Because watching you exist is not enough. I want to see you thrive." The words hit me harder than any declaration of attraction could have because they meant he saw me, really saw me, not just as a charity case or a responsibility, but as a person with potential and dreams and worth. During those 3 days, Lily attached herself to Dante with the totality only children can manage, following him around asking endless questions, demanding he read her stories and play her games and teach her Italian words that she pronounced with such seriousness it made us both laugh. "Mr. Dante," she asked one afternoon while we decorated cookies with Sophia, "can we stay here forever?" Dante looked at me over her head, his expression carefully neutral. "That is up to your mother," he said gently, "but I would like it very much if you stayed." Sophia caught me later in the hallway, flour still dusting her apron, and pulled me aside with the familiarity of someone who had earned the right. "He is different with you," she said without preamble, softer. "I have known him since he was 7 years old, and I have never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you." "I do not know what you mean," I said weakly. "Yes, you do," Sophia replied. "And you look at him the same way. So stop being afraid and let yourself be happy." But even as something bloomed between us, as I caught myself watching him when he did not know I was looking and found him watching me the same way, the threat of Victor hung over everything like a shadow we could not escape. Dante spent hours in his security room coordinating with his men, tracking Victor's movements, gathering information, and on the morning of the 4th day, he came to find me in Lily's playroom where I was building blocks with her. "We need to talk," he said, his expression serious. "Come to my study when you can." I left Lily with Sophia and found Dante in his study surrounded by papers and photographs spread across his desk, evidence of something that made his jaw tight with controlled anger. "My men have been tracking Victor," he said without preamble. "We have located his operation, documented his activities, and what we found." He stopped, looking at me. "Gerald's embezzlement was nothing compared to what Victor has been doing. Human trafficking, drugs, extortion, worse things I will not detail, but trust me when I say he is far more dangerous than we initially believed." My stomach turned because I understood what he was saying, understood that my presence had exposed something larger and darker than anyone had realized. "So what do we do?" I asked. "That is why I called you here," Dante said, moving around the desk to stand in front of me. "Because you get to decide. I can end this tonight. Victor disappears. You are safe. It is simple." "You mean kill him," I said. "I mean eliminate the threat permanently," Dante replied. "My way, fast and final." "Or," I said, because I heard the unspoken alternative. "Or I turn all this evidence over to the FBI," he said, gesturing to the papers on his desk. Let the legal system handle it. Riskier because it puts you in the position of potential witness, and Victor might try something before they can arrest him. But it is the legal way, the right way by society's standards. Why are you giving me this choice? I asked. You have never asked permission before. Because you are not just some person I am protecting anymore, Dante said quietly, his eyes intense on mine. What I decide affects you and Lily, and I need you to be able to live with the choice, to know that justice was served in a way you can accept. I moved to his desk, looking at the evidence spread out there, photographs of Victor with known criminals, financial records showing money laundering, witness statements from people he had hurt, and I thought about the easy solution Dante offered, the permanent removal of a threat that would let us all sleep safely. And what does that teach my daughter? I said finally. That might makes right. That power means you do not need justice. It means the people you love stay safe, Dante replied. Is that not what matters? What matters is who we choose to be when we have the power, I said, turning to face him. You are giving me a choice. I am choosing the harder way, the right way, turn it over to the FBI. Let them arrest him. Let the system work the way it is supposed to. Dante was quiet for a long moment, studying me with an expression I could not read. You are remarkable, he said finally. You know that. Most people would take the easy solution, would not risk their safety for principle. I am not most people, I replied, and I need Lily to grow up understanding that justice exists, that we do not solve problems with violence just because we can. He nodded slowly, and I saw something shift in his expression, respect, and something deeper. Something that looked like love, though neither of us had said the word. I will make the arrangements, he said. But the moment I turn this over, we lose control of the situation. You understand that? The FBI will want to interview you. There will be questions. Victor will know you were involved. I understand, I said. And I am choosing it anyway. The next 48 hours moved with the speed of a freight train. FBI agents arriving at the estate in unmarked cars. Dante handing over his evidence with the casual confidence of someone who had nothing to fear from law enforcement scrutiny. Agents who clearly knew exactly who he was but were willing to overlook certain things for the bigger fish Victor represented. I gave my statement in Dante's study, with a lawyer he provided sitting beside me, explained about being fired on Christmas Eve, and the men searching my apartment, and the threat to my daughter, and I watched the agents' expressions change from skepticism to anger as they realized an innocent woman and child had been targeted. The raid happened at dawn 2 days later, coordinated across multiple locations, and we watched it on the news in Dante's living room, Lily playing with her toys, oblivious, while the reporter detailed the arrest of Victor Castellano and 17 associates on charges ranging from embezzlement to human trafficking to attempted murder. Gerald Vance turned state's witness in exchange for a reduced sentence, his face haggard on screen as he was led into the courthouse. And I felt nothing watching him, no satisfaction. Or anger, just emptiness where my former life used to be. Victor himself was shown being dragged from a warehouse in handcuffs, screaming threats that were bleeped out for television, and Dante's hand found mine on the couch, squeezed gently. It is done, he said quietly. You are safe now. The reality of those words took time to sink in. Safe now. No longer hunted, no longer trapped, free to leave if I wanted to leave. That evening, after Lily was asleep, Dante asked me to meet him in his study, and I went with a feeling of dread, because I knew what was coming, knew he was going to offer me my freedom now that the threat was eliminated. He stood by the window looking out at the grounds, his reflection ghostly in the dark glass, and he did not turn around when I entered. I have arranged an apartment for you, he said, his voice carefully neutral. First-class building, 6 months paid in advance, job references from the hotel that will say whatever you need them to say, and your full-year salary as severance, $120,000 deposited into an account I opened in your name. I stood frozen in the doorway processing his words, the careful generosity of them, the way he was keeping his promises, even though I knew it cost him. "Whatever you need to start over," he continued, "I will provide. You and Lily can leave tomorrow if you wish, or stay a few more days until you are ready. But you are free to go. I give you my word nothing will prevent you from leaving." "And if I do not want to start over," I heard myself say, my voice shaking, "if I want to stay." He turned then, his dark eyes finding mine across the study, and I saw naked vulnerability in his expression for the first time since I had met him. "Maya," he said, just my name but weighted with everything unsaid. "I am not afraid of you, Dante," I said, moving into the room. "I am afraid of how much I have come to care about you in just 1 week. I am afraid that leaving here, leaving you, would be the biggest mistake of my life." "I live in a world of violence," he said, his voice rough. "Danger. I cannot promise you normal. I cannot promise you safety from everything my life touches." "I have had normal," I replied, stepping closer. Normal was being fired on Christmas Eve. Normal was being invisible. Normal was struggling alone and drowning slowly. "You see me, Dante. You see me and you see Lily and you make us feel like we matter." I reached him, looked up into his face. "Lily and I, we want to stay, if you will have us." His hand came up to cup my face, thumb brushing across my cheekbone with a gentleness that contradicted everything dangerous about him. "From the moment I saw you on that bench," he said, voice thick with emotion, "you were mine. I have just been waiting for you to realize you wanted to be." Then he kissed me, and the world narrowed to just us, his mouth on mine and his arms around me, and the feeling of coming home to a place I had not known I was looking for. And when we finally broke apart, I was crying and laughing at the same time. "I love you," I whispered. "I know it is crazy and too fast and impossible, but I love you." "I love you," he replied, "and I will spend the rest of my life proving you made the right choice." The days that followed felt like a dream. Paperwork filed to make my employment official, my belongings retrieved from my old apartment, and moved into the guest suite that Sophia pointedly started referring to as my suite. Lily ecstatic at the news that we were staying forever, asking if that meant Mr. Dante was going to be her new daddy. On New Year's Eve, we decorated a tree together, the three of us, Dante lifting Lily onto his shoulders so she could place the star on top, while I watched from the doorway, feeling my heart so full it might burst. The television played in the background, a news report about Victor Castellano's arraignment and the prosecutor promising justice for his victims. And I felt vindicated in my choice to do things the legal way, even though it had been harder and scarier than Dante's solution would have been. "Merry Christmas, Mommy," Lily called from her perch on Dante's shoulders, "even though it is New Year." "Merry Christmas, baby," I replied, my voice catching. "We are home." And standing there watching my daughter laugh while the man I loved held her steady, watching snow fall outside the windows of a house that had become our sanctuary, I realized I was not just saying words to make Lily happy. We were home, truly home, in a way that had nothing to do with buildings or addresses, and everything to do with being seen, being valued, being loved. Dante met my eyes over Lily's head and smiled, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his whole face. And I smiled back, knowing that life was going to be complicated and sometimes scary and definitely not normal. But it was going to be ours, built on choices we made together rather than circumstances forced upon us. The fired single mom who sat on a bench on Christmas Eve did not exist anymore, and in her place was a woman who had found not just safety but love, not just shelter but home, not just survival but the chance to thrive. And as Lily cheered and the star lit up on top of our tree, I sent a silent thank you into the universe for Gerald Vance's cruelty that night, because without it, I would never have found my way here, to this moment, to this family, to this beautiful, unexpected life.